Sansaglit silang pumasok sa aking isipan.
Here I am, reading all of them for the first time.
Hindi ko matawagan ang number ni Emma. Galit pa rin yata.
Sometimes the raging black ocean calms down for a minute and I can see the sky.
She grabs wine from the freezer. The bottle is broken.
Lights soar across the dark, and the colors dance in the sky.
The clicker also worked well. I've always preferred the retractable ones over cap pens.
Di lang alam ni nanay kasintahan siyang iba.
Sansaglit silang pumasok sa aking isipan.
Here I am, reading all of them for the first time.
Hindi ko matawagan ang number ni Emma. Galit pa rin yata.
Sometimes the raging black ocean calms down for a minute and I can see the sky.
She grabs wine from the freezer. The bottle is broken.
Lights soar across the dark, and the colors dance in the sky.
The clicker also worked well. I've always preferred the retractable ones over cap pens.
Di lang alam ni nanay kasintahan siyang iba.
Sansaglit silang pumasok sa aking isipan.
Here I am, reading all of them for the first time.
Hindi ko matawagan ang number ni Emma. Galit pa rin yata.
Sometimes the raging black ocean calms down for a minute and I can see the sky.
She grabs wine from the freezer. The bottle is broken.
Lights soar across the dark, and the colors dance in the sky.
The clicker also worked well. I've always preferred the retractable ones over cap pens.
Di lang alam ni nanay kasintahan siyang iba.
We live our lives navigating through space with our bodies, trying to make sense of the world that will always somehow be both too big and too small. Although we indeed will never truly know life beyond how we have acquainted ourselves with it individually, it's always nice to come close to experiencing it through others' eyes with how they tell their stories.
Good evening, everyone. We are the grade 7, 8, and 9 creative writing students from the Philippine High School for the Arts, a specialized public high school that offers art-focused education in Mount Makiling, Los Baños, Laguna. We are a part of Kuwit, the collective of 𝘃𝗶𝘁 students who major in creative writing, and our curriculum includes fiction, poetry, writing for theater and film, graphic literature, essay, and cultural studies.
This year's showcase by grades 7 to 9 of Kuwait features the various works they completed over the 2-year quarantine. As the notion of the new norm claims itself a place within our society, we try to pinpoint what makes up the structure of the home and what is familiar as we continue to bring elements of the outside world in.
The following collection of works aims to explore the correlation between the self and the space it inhabits, vis-a-vis family, physical stagnance, loss, and uncertainty as teenagers and adolescents growing into adulthood. We wish everyone well, and we hope you are warm and comfortable as we offer you a glimpse into the frames, spaces, and other things we call home.
On the first few days, the conversation was dropped as fast as it was brought up. We were enjoying an after-school lunch in our go-to restaurant then, munching on our separately paid servings as best friends until we were not. The first time her mouth opened and closed, her words were far too drowned by the overlapping conversations of other diners in the weekend state of the plaza outside. She had to tap my fingers, greasy from processed food, before I was certain it was all directed to me. At this point, I had to read her lips. It was a slow decoding process, but her smile at the end caused a chewed-up mass in my throat to painfully halt mid-journey. Good thing I didn't gag it out, though. It would ruin the moment. But the ache still returns at times. I considered it a souvenir of that day. It took a few minutes to retrieve composure, but the pressure for a reply was growing with every passing second. So while still in shock, I answered without much thought. Yes, I like you. And yes, I want to live with you. She dabbed her lips on a napkin and grinned widely at me, panning her head slowly from side to side, displaying her array of symmetrically uneven teeth. Can you check? She inquired, her tongue peeping out from in between the gaps. There was a bit of beef stuck in between her two front ones, but I guess it was futile to point out the minute thing, so I replied, Nothing. You're good to go. We took no longer than a few hours to grab my belongings, but twice that to arrive in her place due to traffic. The only other security guard on duty that hour spared us a glance as we walked through the building's door. I nod and wince in their direction out of habit. She is a witness to all the times I had to drag my friend's blacked-out ass through the halls and into her unit. College kids was what she must have learned to whisper to herself then. As soon as she unlocked her unit door, wind from an open window wafted the familiar vanilla scent of her perfume, lined with hints of sweat and mildew towards the entrance. It seemed as if she sprayed her belongings with the same sickly sweet scent, for everywhere it lingered. I've been here several times before, but this was the first time I couldn't kick off my shoes in the foyer. I stood there, anxious about disrupting the aroma with the smell of my feet. The painful lump on my throat returned, causing me to swallow harshly. We'll sleep together in my room, is that all right? She asked sweetly, popping her head out from one of the rooms with a slight look of confusion upon catching me frozen. Without thinking, I shook my head slowly. For a moment there, she raised her eyebrows, obviously taken aback. No worries, you can take the room next to mine. I'm aware it's your first time living with somebody, so take your time. With a flash of her smile, she tossed me a pair of slippers and disappeared back into the room. In her absence, I kicked off my shoes without untying the laces and slid on the slippers with swift movements, stepping on the wooden platform and shuffling right behind her. We spent the rest of the day helping me settle in. We lumbered a few of the items on her extra room to a corner in the living area and placed a memory foam mattress on the space overlooking the view from the apartment window. Rusty, mismatched roofs, tangled electricity lines, skeletal trees, and puddled streets from the day prior. From here you can hear the snappy honking of buses and the low gurgling of tricycle engines. Nothing much to be thrilled about. For dinner, we ordered a filling meal from the nearest fast food and devoured it together in one of the kitchen countertops. How about you? Got any stories to tell? She urges, taking a long sip of her tea with wide, anticipating eyes. I violently shook my head. No, your stories are way more entertaining than mine. It was always a relief when she perched her mug back on top of its coaster, preparing for another round. Hey, serious talk, she said, slightly squinting as she looked me in the eye. Do you really like me? I wanted to say yes for quite a while now, but I haven't brushed my teeth yet. Suddenly, I became wary about even breathing through my mouth in front of her. You good? She asked, probably noticing the slight clench of my mouth. No matter how stiff and awkward it looked, I only managed to bob my head, not bothering to confirm which question I had answered to. Even alone in the room, I couldn't get started on my story assignment due the next week. So instead, I starfished on the mattress and streamed the podcast on how to become a better partner or how to know if you're ready for a relationship. The walls here were quite thin, so I could hear her movements as she danced along the rhythm of her favorite old songs. It was quite assuring to hear her having fun despite my odd request of staying alone. And despite my refusal, she left the door to her room open by a sliver anyway. I passed by it once to get a glass of water and spied a piece of her skin, illuminated by the strip of light that slipped through the crack in her door. All I could manage was a small smile, afraid to even step foot in her room and give her a kiss on the forehead. Ever so quietly, I held the doorknob and closed her door, saying to myself that tomorrow would be different. The next day, the sun seemed to shine brighter than usual, flooding warm light through my window. I walked out the room and was welcomed by her figure sitting on this chair by the countertop, partly hidden by the takeouts from the same fast food chain from last night's dinner. I hesitated a soft kiss on her hair before settling on the seat opposite from her. "How was your first night?" she asked, smiling with her lips still firm from sleep. I took out the only other box in the paper bag and found iced coffee and hotcakes. So I poured the maple syrup and watched the liquid slowly gravitate toward the cube of butter on the top of the pile. "Very cozy, actually," I managed to comment, making her smile. I pierced the spot on my stack and took hold of my knife, separating a generous 3-layer piece from the group. Bringing the occupied fork to my lips, I allowed the flavors and textures of the butter, maple syrup, and pancakes to swirl around my mouth for a while, making sure to coat every crevice of it with that unforgettable combo. When I looked up, she seemed to be finished with her meal of chicken nuggets, for she was now dabbing at the corners of her mouth with a paper towel. Then she looked at me and displayed her array of teeth, patting her head slowly from side to side. "Can you check?" I looked up. There were remnants of chicken nugget breading pocketed in different places, but I guessed it was futile, for she would brush her teeth right afterwards anyway. "Nothing, you're good to go," I said, bending back down and shoving another forkful of serving into my mouth.
Our name. I remember sitting in the wrong chair during the first day of school. It had my name, so naturally I'd sit on it, but Mrs. Ramos walked towards me. At first, I thought she'd just greet me or compliment my outfit until she said, "I think you should be sitting there," pointing at the chair to my right. I faked a smile as I felt my cheeks turn red out of embarrassment. It turned out that the chair to my right had my name too. Maybe it's a typo, I thought. It could have been Aaliyah, a more common name, or maybe Talia, like my cousins. But it wasn't. When I first saw her walk in, I thought her holographic backpack was cute. The braids on her dark brown hair also looked very well. I really liked the sound of her high-heeled boots walking across the wooden floor of her classroom. I kind of envied her too, for she didn't have to wear thick eyeglasses like mine that would give me acne around my nose every now and then. I've always known in the back of my mind that I wanted a new classmate, for I haven't met a new person for a while already back then. Ever since I entered that school, our batch only decreased throughout the years. She put her backpack down and sat on the chair to my left. On second thought, her boots seemed too tacky and the ponytails she used to tie her French braids were of different colors. Mrs. Ramos then asked us to get a piece of paper to write our nicknames on and pass around for us to write adjectives that would describe the owner of the paper. I wrote my name as she wrote the exact same name as mine. The dot on her letter I was hollow though. Her L's were loopy too compared to mine, which were just straight lines. At least her name looked different. When our papers came back to us after being written on by all our classmates, my paper contained the words kind, helpful, which was written 5 times each by a different classmate, and many other adjectives one would use to describe anybody besides their enemy. I then looked at the transferee's paper in which I wrote nice on even if I've barely talked to her. She also received a bunch of cutes and kinds, but one stuck the most to me. The phrase even made me adjust my eyeglasses to see it more clearly. Somebody wrote, "cool glasses." All I could do was fixate my eyes on the way the dot on her letter I was hollow and the way her L's were loopy.
I live in a box. Here, there are no windows or shadow of my body. A tapping sound echoes over the 4 walls in synchronized beat, neither heavy nor thin. The comparison is clear over the fluttering whispers by the little people I've kept in my ears. There are 2 girls and a boy, a man and an old woman. They are not my friends and I wonder if they don't like me sometimes. Maybe they hate the way I dress, or how I put 4 spoonfuls of sugar on my coffee. Yet still they never left. I like one of them. I can't remember her name, but I think it rhymes with the word Daisy. She's not the prettiest, but she has the softest fingers among them. It was just as soft as when my mother cleaned my belly button with cotton buds when I was 5. The girl whose name rhymes with Daisy actually looks more like my mother more than I. I never looked like my mother. My relatives said I look more like my aunt, who got a miscarriage when she was 18, and was then sent to a boarding school in New Zealand for 10 years. She came back and forgot her parents' faces. The first time I met the girl whose name rhymes with Daisy, she was drinking a cup of coffee. Coffee is what killed my mother. She had a heart attack because she drank too much coffee. The girl already knew that. Still, she drinks 2 or more cups of coffee every day. Most of the time, I would drink with her. Coffee is better than milk, I'd say. With the right amount of sugar, of course. The girl whose name rhymes with Daisy and I are very different. She likes wearing skirts, but they feel too rough against my skin. She prefers those fluffy turtleneck clothes, but I think they make my cheeks look fatter. I still like her though, even if she ignores me most of the time. She's also a very honest person. She would tell me right away when my hair looks bad, or when I'm being weird again. She would criticize my taste in movies and my love for tragic villain tropes. She told me I was either a fucking sadist or a masochist. Maybe both. She just rolled her eyes at me. In the end, she'd watch the movies with me anyway. Throughout, she never laughed or cried. I was disappointed. Not at her, but at the movies. Sometimes, I'd throw her skin against my arm, and she never noticed, I think. I just stared at her. One day I offered her my body, but she was never interested, she said. That moment felt like how I felt when I gave my mother flowers on Mother's Day. The other little people shook their heads at me, also disappointed. I am taller than the girl whose name rhymes with Daisy, I think. I am not sure they still can see her shadow. None of them has one, I think. We live together in this box, in a box where my chest beats against my legs, never sleeping.
Pasan ni tatay ang masalimuot na trabaho. Nakatutok ang mata sa mga sulat kronikong salitang binubuan. Nagkaniyang sumasayaw ng daliri sa tibaan ng computer. Di lang alam ni nanay kasintahan siyang iba.
Freeze. 1. She comes to me holding my cake, a smile on her face as she sets it down on the table. She starts to sing the happy birthday song. Her voice sounds like a fork scraping a plate, repeatedly scraping while being chucked inside a rusty blender. I don't tell her this. She grabs wine from the freezer. The bottle is broken. It leaks and drips all over the floor. I tell her this. She rolls her eyes. It's just a small leak, she says, and places it on the sink. She grabs a match and strikes the cake. She misses. It lands on the leak. The fire surrounds her. It burns her body to a crisp. The cake stands unlit. 2. She comes up to me with the cake in hand. She assembles each candle and lights it up. Standing in the corner of the room, she sings a happy birthday song. Her voice is barely audible. I scream for her to sing louder. She does so, but I still cannot hear. I ask for her to sing louder again. She breathes in and breathes in for a long time before puffing out and singing. The wind blows and knocks down the candle. Her body lights up in flames. 3. She sets the box down on the counter and cradles a cigar between her teeth. She chews on the orange end, growling. Her hands wrapped around the bow. I point a knife at her, but she refuses. She tugs and tugs and tugs, screaming in anger. The cigar drops on the box. It lights the cake up, bringing her along with it. 4. I dislike the taste of chocolate. I find it too sweet. But she insisted on buying. I never had a cake before. She sets it down and grabs a small knife, giving an excited yelp. She grabs the lighter from the sink. A cockroach flies by both of us, its wings ripping the air in two. It lands on her eyes to rest. She screams and drops the lighter. 5. We bought an electric stove. She sets the cake on top and looks around the apartment. She's looking for a lighter. There's nothing. She asks me if I have one. I don't. She sighs, disappointed, and goes to the cake. She peels the box open like a banana. A fire starts from below the stove. I forgot to close it. I am sorry. 6. The cake was red. Ironically, it wasn't strawberry but chocolate. It didn't tower over us. It was just there. I left it in the fridge. It has always been in the fridge.
Tanghaling tapat. Kung meron mang nangyari, walang nakakita at walang makakakita. Walang ibang tao sa bahay o sa kalye kundi ako, ngunit hindi ko magawang lumayo sa kinatatayuan. Marami pa akong kailangang gawin. Nilunok ko ang paparating na hikab bago subukang sundantingin ang mga malaki-tikiting kulay na lumalangoy sa aking tanaw. May mga nakahanay sa mesa. Chopping board, malaking kutsilyo, ilang plato. Basahan. Malunggay at kalabasa na ibubulang lang para sa hapunan, habang sa kaliwa may dumadada sa telebisyon. Isang mister na di namamansin ng misis, o isang dancer na binastos umano ng host, o kaya isang palabas na nambubulabog ng mga barangay bitbit ang papremyo. Hindi ko alam. Sansaglit silang pumasok sa aking isipan. May pakwan. Minatahan kong sandali ang talim, ang aking nangangaspang at namamaltos na mga palad, ang nanunuklap na adhesive ng band-aid sa ilang bahagi nito. Nalulunod ang mga salita sa paglagapak ng talim ng kutsilyo sa plastik na kayatan. Kung may darating man, pakwan ang merienda. Hindi ako madalas makaalala at waring makina ang aking mga braso sa paggayat, ngunit kanina, habang naglalakad pa uwi, napahinto ako sa tapat ng isang construction site dahil may butiking huminto sa tabi ng aking paa. Nagkatagpo kami ng tingin. Bitbit ko sa aking kamay ang plastik ng mga pinamili, habang bitbit niya sa kanyang bibig ang isang nagpupumiglas na ipis. Napaurong akong kaunti, kinilabutan at marahil ng hina, ngunit hindi ko mapigilang manood ng kanilang pagbubunuan. Pumipitlag-pitlag ang ipis, kumakawag-kawag ang mga biyas at ang butiki, palaki ng palaki ng palaki ang pagnganga. Waring naisipagkasya ang kabuuan ng ulo ng kapwa insekto sa kanyang bunganga. Nakakadiri. Kung paanong umuunat ang manipis at madumi at namumutlang balat ng butiki sa kanyang mapagpilit na paglulon, nakakadiri. Ngunit ngayon, habang bumabagsak ang talim ng kutsilyo sa gayatan, naisip kong hindi ko dapat pinagninilayan ang nasaksihan habang naghihiwa ng pakwan. Inilinya ko ang talim sa gitna ng laman at unti-unting iniangat ang brasong walang tigil ang pag-unat sa anino sa mesa at ibinagsak. Sa puwersa, ramdam ang pagbaon ng talim sa lalim ng namumulang laman. Nagsisimulang mamasa-masa ang gayatan. Waring makina, iniangat kong muli ang braso at ibinagsak ang talim sa isang kalahati mula sa unang paggayat. Inulit sa kabila. Inulit at inulit at inulit at ibinagsak pang muli ang kutsilyo sa paliit na mga parte. Natabunan ng mga lagapak sa plastik na gayatan ang mga salita mula sa telebisyon habang dumarami ang namumulang patak sa ilalim ng mesa. Pumasok sa isip kong paghambingin ang tunog ng hinihiwang pakwan at tunog ng ipis na kumakawag at kinakagat ng butiki. Hindi ko masabi kung magkatulad ang pakiramdam, kung matubig ba ito sa bibig ng butiki, kung mahirap ba itong kagatin, kung may mga mumunting buto bang nakasasagabal sa pagnamnam. May buto bang mga ipis? May leeg ba ang mga ito? Huminto akong sandali upang tingnan ang mga ginayat na pakwan, kutsilyo sa kanang kamay. Matubig at namumula-mula ang pinaggayatan, waring munting ilog sa kahabaan ng mesa, ngunit pwede ring dugong dumadaloy sa mga ugat ng katawan. Ano kayang pakiramdam ng manakmal at lumulon ng kapwa hayop? Malamang ay hinabol ng butiki ang ipis. Malamang ay ginawa ng ipis ang lahat ng makakaya upang makatakas. Sa segundong nabalit na pagkasya ng butiki ang ulo sa kanyang bibig, nakaramdam kaya siya ng kasiguraduhan na sa kanilang dalaway siya ang mananaig? Tumingin ako sa paligid noon. Kakaunti lang ang lamang ng araw sa taas ng itinatayong gusari at sa kalayuan, waring langgam na umaakyat sa pader ang mga manggagawa dito. Sa kalsada, may umarangkadang sasakyang kumikinang. Natalsikan ng putik ang mga batang araw at matapos matilamsikan ay nagsimulang magmarcha ang tunay na mga langgam. Ninakaw ang sa ipis na naiwang bangkay. Tulad ng mga manggagawa ng gusali, sila ay mabilis. Sa ilang kurap lamang ay wala nang naiwang bakas ng ipis, putiki o langgam sa tabi ng aking paa. Malinis. Kutsilyo sa kanang kamay, dinampot ko ang basahan at unti-unting nilampaso ang parte ng sahig na napatakan ng katas. Kung hindi aamuyin ang basahan, aakalaing pinamunas ito ng natubigang dugo sa halip na katas ng pakwan. May lumalakas na namang mga sigaw sa kalapit bahay. Nilulunod ng mga nagtatalasang boses ni Nena at Dumundon na ang mga dumadada sa aking telebisyon. Sa paglapag ng basahan sa mesa, naisip kong sumandali sa kanilang kinalalagyan. Napansin kong malagkit ang aking gagap sa tangkay ng kutsilyo. Maaari ko siguro silang alukin ng pakwan.
It's hard to imagine being anywhere indoors and not seeing tiles thrown on the floor. At the very least, the floor would be cemented, painted or plain. If not, it would just be made of dirt. Of course, that's not the kind of thing you'd think about 7 years ago. It didn't matter what floor you stood on when you were together. There was a white tile of your living room, the dark wooden floors of hers, the gray cemented floors of your elementary school, the floor of her car. Right now, it's white tile, but it isn't your living room. The person beside you is unable to stay still. The rough edges of their white monoblock chair scrape irritatingly against your skin once in a while as they rock back and forth in their seat. The room smells of unidentifiable flowers and candles. Everyone here looks like they just came out of a film from the early 1900s. Black and white attire flutter around as people run around chatting. The few who didn't were crying. The floor around the table scattered with food wrappers and crumbs. Their colors stood out from the whiteness of the ground. A man dressed in black walks by you, pats your shoulder and snatches a pack of skyflakes from the table. A woman does the same. You see her lips moving but don't quite catch what she's saying. She walks away. Ants form a line on the floor below, following the trail of crumbs from the provided snacks. The line reaches the entrance. It's stained brown with muddy footprints from people walking in from the rain that continues to pour outside. Someone grabs your arm and drags you back to your seat. They keep their arms wrapped around you. You trace the grout of the tiles with your shoe. Another person asks you to walk to the front. The floor there is still scattered with food. Skid marks from shoes and fallen flower petals decorated the tile. The golden designs of the white casket come into view. Her smile is the same, parallel to the faces of those shedding tears around you. The photo is framed with flowers and ribbons sitting atop the open casket. She lays there peacefully. You wish that peace upon yourself. You turn away. There's a crack in the floor below you.
Habul-habulan. Wait lang! Hoy! Sumigaw ako. Ayaw ko nga. Sigaw niya pabalik. Hinigisan ko siya ng tsinelas. Aray! Nadapa siya at hinaplos niya ang kanyang ulong matigas. Ang sama mo, sabi ko. Sorry na, di na kita kukulitin. Tugon niya. Oy, huwag ka na magtampo. Ha? Di ako nagtatampo. Bukas magtayan tayo ulit. Ako mauna sa dulo. Nasa paaralan ako noon. Hindi alintana ang mga nangyayari sa paligid at gustong umuwi ng maaga. Nanatili ang pakiramdam na may nawawala sa akin. Nagmasid ako. Lahat ng tao at bagay ay nasa lugar nila, bukod sa aking kaibigan. Pinangako niya na maghabol-habulan kaming dalawa hanggang sa aming mga tiyan ay kumirot. Manloloko talaga siya. Pangatlong araw na to sa isang linggo na labiban siya sa klase. Baka masakit siya. O nag-iinati lang para di pumasok dahil makikita niya muli ang aking magandang mukha. Mag-isang nakasandal ako sa upuan. Hinihintay na yayain niya akong gumawa ng kalokohan. 1, 2, 3. Malingaw-ngaw ang ingay ng kampana sa buong espasyo. Isang hapon na naman ang nasayang. Nagmadali kaming lumabas. Kaso, sa halip na nakasalubong ko ang aking nanay ng isa, naroon si tatay at ang aking bunsong kapatid. May mga kotse na kapaligid sa kalsada. Naisip kong may pagtutipon ngayong araw ng mga puso, pero hindi ko alam kung saan. Sumakay kami at nanatiling tahimik. May tulo ng pawis sa pisngi ni nanay. Sumulyap ako sa bintana at nakita ko ang simbahan. Malumay kaming lumabas sa kotse. Maalinsangan ang loob ng simbahan. Umiidlip ang mga ilaw paminsan-minsan at ang mga tao'y lumilibot sa harap ng altar. Di umimik ang mga bata at patuloy silang nakatulala. Lumapit ako sa harapan at isang pahalang na kahon sa gitna ang aking naitatnan. Tumingin ako sa butas nito. Ako ang aking kaibigan na mahimbing na natutulog. May matangkad na lalaki na gusik ng tubig sa kahon at nakasuot siya ng puti. May 6 na binatang lumapit at unti-unting binuhat ito. Umakas kami muli sa kotse at bumaba sa isang lugar na madamo. Napakaganda ng tanawin at may mga hugis kahong bato sa lupa. Ang mga pangalan ng mga tao ay nakapaskil dito. Umakyat kami sa tuktok at pumunta sa bahaging walang mga hugis kahon na bato. Nagukay ang mga binata ng isang butas na palang, kasing sukat ang kahon ng aking kaibigan. Humahagulgol ang mga batanda habang nilalagay sa butas ang kanyang kahon. Anong ginagawa nila kay Ken? O sisa ko? Natutulog lang siya, sabi ng papa. Bakit kailangan ilagay sa butas ang kama niya? Sandamakmak na mga katanungan ang pumalapot sa aking isipan. Paano kung magising siya? Sino magtatanggal sa kanya sa butas? Anto na ang lumipas at hindi pa rin siya bumabalik sa paaralan. Mahina na ang ingay ng kampana at kaunti na lang ang mga ibon. Naghihintay pa rin akong yayain niya ako at maghabol-habulan kami muli. Little spider boy, I stared at your collection at the bottom of the shelf. Encyclopedias about science, mainly biology. It's silly to think that I would end up liking the subject years later. And here I am, reading all of them for the first time. I am at your house right now, and I only have one reason to be here. I want to remember. I have forgotten how you sound like that every time my parents mention you, I can only hear ringing in my ear. I have forgotten how you look like that my vision blurs whenever I look at the pictures on the walls. I have forgotten how soft your hands were, that my hands feel rough whenever I hold a book from your collection. And so, I have forgotten you, but your mother hasn't. She tells me how you would jump out of your seat every time they would pick us up from class. She laughs at the memory of me getting lost in the neighborhood when you would let me ride your bike. She counts all of the books from your collection that she couldn't read to you with a lump on her throat. All I can see in her face is a trace of her old self before you left. She nods at me, and I nod back. I'm at the stairs right now, just beside the bedroom. Your old collection of spider toys is still up at the end of it, and I meet them here for the first time. Some of them are old, and others are the gifts I would drop whenever I visit here. I hope you return soon to see how much your collection has gotten bigger. And when you do, I will tell you all about the recent breakthroughs in science, like how scientists discovered the ancestor of all penguins today lived in a hidden continent called Zealandia. I wonder if you know about Zealandia. Do you still read science books? I wonder if you know that baby platypuses are called puggles. I wonder if you know about Neanderthals and that we Homo sapiens inbred with them 50,000 years ago. I wonder if you knew that they used to make yarn out of the bark of a tree. Did you know that the sun will explode in 1 billion years? I wonder if you think humans can find a new home before that. Do you know about climate change? I wonder if you can help. I wonder, even if the world ends sooner than expected, you will still come back.
Hello? Thank you for watching the first half of Frames, Spaces, and Other Things We Call Home. We hope to have you join us again tomorrow night at 8:30 p.m. for the last half, featuring more authors from Junior High Kuwit. Once again, thank you and good night.